Hello, folks. It's Ted here. Um, I am the, I guess you could say, the main developer guy for Moose Solutions, the game that you're seeing right here. And what I wanted to do actually today was just introduce myself. This is actually the first festival that I've ever done. And so I am working on a lot of things. Actually, it was a bit of a surprise to me that the game got into the stream, or got into this event, which is really cool. And um, I think one of the kind of more interesting things about the game, obviously, I think it's a pretty good puzzle game, so I'm going to play it for a little bit. So we'll do that right now. I just gotta get this thing running. So here we go. I'm actually gonna, well, no, I'll turn off that display capture here, and then I'll just go back to the game itself. So what I've got here, I'm actually just building and running it on my, oops. So maybe you can just see it. So one of the things I've been doing lately, turn the music down. Okay, yeah, you can see it. That's cool. Hang on, I'm actually going to turn the music off. Okay, no music. Cool. Actually, can you hear it if it's on? Yeah, you can hear it if it's on. Okay. All right, so one of the more interesting aspects of this game. Okay, so I'm actually gonna play it. I'm gonna go back to the world map, and I can see it right here. So what you see here is in my OBS window, you're seeing just kind of like a smaller window of the game itself, which is kind of cool. I've got all the developer stuff in the background here. So I'm going to actually tell a little bit about the story of this game. The game was conceived of a long time ago, maybe a few years ago, probably a few years ago, as a game jam game. So I'll start at the very first level here. Okay. And so I've got my guy. Oh, and interesting. I've got like a mouse pointer here. Okay, that's funny. So what you're seeing is actually the Steam Deck version of the game. Well, technically speaking, what you're seeing is the what is it? The iPhone 11 version. Okay. And the reason for that is the following. Hang on, I'll just grab like a little bit of water. It's because I am currently working on porting the game to the iPhone. And this game has a bit of a different kind of development story. So I'm actually I'm gonna turn off the moose anger things. Anyway, the way that you play this game, you anger these moose. It's kind of like a puzzle game. This moose gets pretty angry at you. I can back away. So my problem here is I can't walk past this moose. So like in real life, you can't walk past moose. It's a reality. That's how things go. Can't walk past him. But what I can do is I can go up in front of him and I can anger him. Now, if I anger him in such a way as to make him hit me, then I get trampled. And we don't want that. So now this is showing the on-screen controls for the Steam Deck because it's a little bit different on that device than it is on my my Windows computer. So on my Windows computer, the game actually plays full screen, which is just different. So that's kind of the reality. 1 second. Got to check to make sure things are okay with the dogs. Okay. Sorry. My spouse just sent me something funny. Okay. Anyway, you get trampled. Okay, so what I'm actually doing right now is I'm simulating what the game's going to look like on the iPhone because I'm currently porting to it. Now, so the gameplay is a Moose charges into things, he can charge into you. And if you get past him, then you get the Moose Lucian, right? So that's the Moose Lucian to that puzzle. And there's 49 of these because that's about as many as I could think of. And I'm still like, if you have any better ideas, like please send them my way because I am running out of like I just kind of I ran out of as many as good ideas as I could think of for this set of rules I came up with, and then I was just like, oh my god, man, I don't know, I can't think of any more. But I do, if I can come up with like, you know, some more mechanics or something or more interesting rules, then I might do like a spring theme or something. But it's kind of got seasonal themes. So it starts to layer, right? Like any puzzle game. Here I've got 3 moose and I've got to get them onto the switches, right? And then like the order that I anger the moose actually matters, right? So if I got this guy here and I anger him and he's mad, and then he's, you know, running into that guy, that sucks, right? So if I anger him, he gets mad, right? And now he goes here, and I get the right order, then the gate goes down. If there's like enough moose and things on the pressure plates, then the gate goes down, and then you get the Moose Lucian. But it starts to layer a little bit later on in the game. So this adds, now that we get a theme change, this is the game's fall theme. And I have, it's kind of cool the way it reflects on my face. I have the box here. So this box is kind of, obviously you can push it like any kind of Sokoban game. But the cool thing about it also is it's a moose deterrent. So it actually prevents the moose from getting angry, like I'm standing behind it, okay? So this kind of makes the game like a bit of a stealth game, if you can think about it like that. So I guess I can't really think of any, like, I don't know, maybe Hitman Go or something. I actually should play that game. But it's a bit of a stealth game. And so if I stand behind this block, then the moose won't get mad at me. But also if I anger the moose, then he'll charge and he'll stop at the block. And so the Moose Lucian to that puzzle is the moose stopping at that block. And now I've got a block on the switch, and then I've got the other moose on the switch. Now you can imagine if I push the block away, then the gate's going to go down and I'm going to die, right? Or like I go up and then the gate goes up or whatever. And so that's not fun. If I hit Z, then I can undo back to the state where it was okay. So again, there are layers. And then the puzzles actually get quite a bit harder. So puzzle 12 is kind of where things get real, you could say. So here, I don't want to like spoil it because that's just not my style. But yeah, this is kind of where the game gets real. So, and then of course, much further into the game, I start to have puzzles which are, I would say, substantially harder. So this is probably one of the most difficult puzzles in the game right here. Because one of the things you can do, actually, I'll show you this in a different puzzle here. So this is the winter theme, right? Sort of the final element, or one of the more final elements, is this moose cart that they can charge in, right? Or rather, you can push them in. So I got this guy here, and I've got this moose cart, and I'm pushing him in the cart, and I'm pushing him in the cart, and I push him, and then I can like anger him from the cart, and then he charges out of the cart. So I can use the cart to kind of like load the moose, and then I can push him along these railroad tracks, right? And then I can anger the moose, and then the moose will hit the switch, right? And then I can just kind of push things. So that's the Moose Lucian to that puzzle, right? So you can imagine it gets more layered and more complex, and I don't necessarily, like, I don't want to ruin it. So I'm not going to ruin it. I'm going to let you play it and then like let you kind of come to your own conclusions. But actually today, because the game is going live on the turn-based Carnival Festival website, and that there's, some chance that people, I don't know, I guess the stream will get some traffic. So I thought it would be kind of cool to do this. I was actually on my Windows computer, and I was in the middle of working on the mobile design. And I thought it would be kind of cool to give you a bit of a behind the scenes developer preview of sort of some of the stuff I'm doing. Because it's a little unusual, actually. One of the cool things about this game that I've spent a little bit of time talking about it. I actually made this whole game from scratch. Not the not like the language that my nephew uses, like Scratch, like that. Not that. I made it by hand with just basically C++ and some Windows libraries. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I didn't use a game engine. I didn't make a game engine either. I think there's a little bit of a confusion there in terms of how people talk about these kinds of things. So now I've sort of trapped myself, right? So if I didn't make a game engine and I'm not using a game engine, then what did I do? Well, I contend that I just made a game. So I made a game, and then the engine is just like the leftover stuff after making the game. And in the process of doing so, I've had to solve a number of problems, like a lot of problems. And then as I solve those problems, sort of you could say that the accumulated solutions to those problems, the Moo solutions, if you will, have become kind of that's what the game engine is, or like that's what the sort of reusable components of the game are. So at present, this game is on Windows. So like you're seeing this on a Steam live stream, right? So the game is on Windows, and it's also on Mac OS. So how did I do that? Well, I learned the tools of the trade by watching Casey Muratori's Handmade Hero live stream series. And I learned how to create separation between the platforms that the game runs on and the game itself. So what's cool about this is it really doesn't matter what platform I run it on. It's exactly the same game. And so on Windows, on Mac OS, and even on iOS, actually what I'll do right now, because I've got my iPhone with me, I'll show you. Now this is not as good. Okay, hang on. Maybe I can just kind of... Oh God, the reflection on that is so bad. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't focus very well. But I've got it working on my iPhone. And it also, in case you're curious, this game runs pretty darn well on the Steam Deck. So I'll go get my Steam Deck right now. 1 second. I'll show you. All right, so here's Steam Deck. Kinda. All right, it does not want to show it. Okay, you can kind of see it. Okay, there's the library art, right? So it's on Steam Deck. What's cool about this is it actually uses this thing called Proton, and Proton is like a library that allows you to just port your Windows games from basically, if you write if you make a really good Windows version of your game, then Proton will just kind of make it work. So here it is on the Steam Deck, right? Just pull back a little bit. So actually maybe a little bit closer is better. So it runs on the Steam Deck. It's kind of cool. It's actually pretty nice on the Steam Deck. And I just made some improvements to make it really good on the Steam Deck. So, okay, this light is not working. It's like totally blurring me. I'll be right back. That is only marginally better. All right. Well, I'm blurred. Okay, so I was going to say that it runs on the Steam Deck. It actually runs pretty darn well on the Steam Deck. And one of the cool things is because I did everything kind of like from scratch. Oh, there we go. There we go. Nope. Nope. Oh, there we go. That works. Okay. Because I did everything from scratch, I have total control over how my games are made and like the entire development process, which is awesome because when it comes to, say, making the game work on Steam Deck, I don't really have to go through Unity. I don't have to go through Godot or Unreal or any of those things. I can just focus on the aspects of my game that are my game. So there's like what I mean by that is like I actually mean some really specific things. Like there's really only like one shader that I use for the whole thing because so I don't have to like compile all these other shaders and stuff. I just use like one shader for doing pixel art. It's like kind of like a really cool pixel art sampling shader, and it scales pixel art up by a certain amount. And so that's a pretty darn awesome thing, actually, because it's just a lot less work that the game actually has to do. So when I build the game on my Windows computer, it actually builds in like less than 5 seconds, which is awesome. And when it comes to being able to prototype the game or being able to make the game work on, say, the Steam Deck, one of the things I can do, it's pretty awesome. I can just like take this window that the game is. I can make it simulate a Steam Deck sized window. Okay, and so then I can be like, oh, does this game actually look good on the Steam Deck? And then I can do like most of my work on my Windows PC, just like making sure it looks good inside of that smaller window. And then when I'm ready to actually test it on the Steam Deck, I can upload a build that's the size or that's kind of like a final test build. And so just that amount of time that I have to spend on kind of prototyping out some of those interactions on the Steam Deck or just like the look and the feel on the Steam Deck is much, much smaller than I would have to spend if I had, like, if every time I had to test it out, I had to like upload a build to Steam and then go and get my Steam Deck over here, right? And then turn it on, check the build. Like you can imagine if you're doing that over and over and over again, you end up spending like a lot of time kind of that's wasted. So what's really cool about this is I can use my fastest computer to develop the games, which is my Windows PC. And then when I need to do kind of more detailed work, like I actually develop all the Mac OS stuff. I've got a Mac laptop here, so I'll show you that. See my MacBook. So I use a MacBook, and this is just hooked up to my monitor. So I use a MacBook to do all of the games like iOS and macOS porting. And when I was first starting out with that, I did spend a great amount of time on the Mac. So I actually have an iMac. The very first versions of my games, I actually wrote them on the iMac. And then I ended up like kind of porting it all over to Windows. But then now what's cool is I can do most of the work on the game itself on my Windows computer. And then it's almost like feels sort of like magic because basically once the in-game work is done, it just works on my MacBook. like the Mac version, I just run some build commands and then it's like that Mac version just still works, as if nothing happened. So there really isn't much that's like Mac specific. And actually what was really cool lately about starting to port this to iOS, Because again, what you're seeing here, what you're seeing in this game window is actually the game. You're seeing the game on a simulated iPhone screen on my Windows computer. So I can do all this work on Windows, and I can even put like touch controls over here, right? So I've got like, what I've got here is a little mouse cursor. This mouse cursor does not show up in the Windows version because you don't really need it. But I use it when I'm testing like touch controls. So I've got a test mode where I have touch controls here, and I can just test all the touch controls on my Windows computer. And then when it comes time to actually like get it running on an iOS device, I can just, it all basically works. Like if I tested it and it worked like with the clicks on the Windows version, then it almost certainly works on the iOS version. And that I think is just really cool. I think it's a much faster workflow. So like one of the things, if you do like a lot of mobile app development, there's like a lot of these quote unquote cross-platform solutions to software development on mobile. So you might see things like Xamarin or React Native are sort of like touted as some of the kinds of things that are used. And they're okay. Actually, I think React Native is like objectively trash, but the promise of them is that they'll actually make development a lot faster for teams because they can do like hot code reloading on the device. And what I found is that usually when it comes to developing the bulk of a software application, especially one that you plan to put on like a mobile device, it's actually, in my opinion, much better to do the majority of like the core software development for it on like a totally different computer. Like it's much better to do it like on like a Windows computer that's like really fast, like just like a dedicated like development machine that's like super fast. And then all you're doing is you just like, if you want it to draw inside of a smaller window, you just simulate a smaller window. And then when it comes time to port the thing, just the application, whether it's a game or even just like a regular mobile app, I think, when it comes time to port it, you really don't have as much work to do on the actual device itself. So you're spending like as little time as possible just on the device, except for like, some kind of final checks, right? Basically what you're doing is like, you're hooking up the touch controls, and then you're handling like some small amount of like platform specific stuff for that particular platform. And then you're just good to go. So actually what I want to do right now, because I know, I'm showing you a mobile version of the game and you're probably like, wow, this sort of looks like ass. It's like, sitting on here. I want to show you actually what the game looks like full screen, because it looks really pretty great full screen on Windows. So I'm just going to switch over to that right now. One moment. Okay. So there we go. Oh, now it's all offset. This should be full screen. Okay, so yeah, it's full screen. This is the actual game playing full screen. So yeah, it looks a lot better. And what's neat about this? So this is like the shipping Windows version of the game. If you buy it on Windows, then this is what you will play. and it just takes the content area, it makes it full screen. And this is that, similar puzzle that I was doing earlier. And I have all this. So I've got the moose here. He'll crash into this. So basically, like, what's going on here is this moose, he runs into that one, and now he turns here, and then I got this thing here. It's kind of cool. So that freed up my block, basically. That's kind of what I'm trying to teach you with that puzzle, is like you can free up this block. So that's the moose solution to this one. It gets a lot harder. So here's another kind of, this is starting to get harder in that fall theme. So I'll just leave it here. Anyway, now that I've got this lovely autumn glow in front of me, what did I want to say? I want to say, like, yeah, it's kind of cool to be able to develop things in kind of an old school sort of a way. I think a lot of like how I do things now might be considered old school because I don't really use game engines. But what's awesome about it is it gives you this like total flexibility and control, and you can just, when it comes time to do like the mobile version of your game, which I've decided to do because the game got into a few festivals like this one. I just was like, okay, well, I can run the game inside of this like tiny little simulator window, and that's a neat thing. And I can like test all the mobile controls out that way, and I can just like, I can do all that stuff, and it's awesome. And then when it comes time to port, I can just port it. But what I always have is the ability to like run this game full screen on my Windows machine as it was intended to be played, right? And so it's just this like very different kind of way of doing things, I would say. And for me, it's actually a lot more pleasant to be able to work this way. Kind of wish like more people would do that, because I think it really makes like the whole process of making games and making software just a lot more pleasant. Like actually, like I really like don't want to be, at least most of the time when I'm doing like mobile app development, I really don't want to be sending data back and forth to my phone, and I don't want to have to go through that sort of like iteration cycle, because it actually takes a fair amount of time. And so what's great is like what the point that I was trying to make, the thing that I'm very excited about right now is the ability to work on a mobile game without having to be a mobile app developer. I think that's like actually pretty awesome, without having to, like, when it comes to the core part of iterating on your game's concept, right? Of like testing out if this gameplay idea works, or if that like rendering technique works, or if this bit of polish, or like, any number of things that are more relevant to what I would call the game itself, right? So like that there's that separation between the game that you're making and then the platform that it's running on. So when you can do that, when you have the ability to kind of like set all that up for yourself, it's neat. Because I can do like all that hard sort of like iterating on like, oh, what are the puzzles going to be? Or like, when I wake up one morning and I have an idea for a puzzle in my head, it's a lot easier for me to just like boot up my Windows computer with my built-in level editor for the game, where I can just like, edit the place, and I just play on that instead of having to play the game on, or like try and imagine if I was trying to like, if this was a mobile game and I was trying to edit the levels on my phone, right? Like it's doable, sure, but it's not really like, I think we could agree that that's not really the best experience for doing that. And so it's just nice to, when it comes to something like a level editor, right? So like a level editor, I think of as it's sort of like scaffolding for your game, right? It's not something that like you, the player, right, would see. So you don't need to know about my game's level editor. It's like that's a little tool that I made for myself, and I can just kind of play around in it, and I can do that on like the best machine that the game runs on, right? I can do that on like my fancy Windows computer with the RTX 3080 Ti and like the like super awesome, ultra fast processor. And I can do it on that computer. That's where I can like do I can do the bulk of my development on my favorite computer that's also like my fastest and most well maintained. And then when it comes time to porting to like different platforms, I do, I'll spend a little bit of time in Mac OS or iOS or Xcode or all those. You have to, right? You have to spend like some small amount of time using those platforms. But ideally, I think like what we should be shooting for as game developers is to like spend the least amount of time in Xcode and in, you know, the iOS simulator or like, iOS devices or anything, because like really it's more about crafting that great experience that works well on any platform. And so I'm just like, I'm very much wholly in support of doing that. I was actually going to like take the stream. I don't know. I was going to do it to just like show some of the development, but like what I kind of mean is showing it to you at like a really high level. And then I think you can kind of pick it apart yourself. And so just to give you kind of like a high level overview before ending the stream of like what I've done here. I wrote the game in C++. That's the core language. And then it has these different platform layers. So it's got a platform layer for Windows, right? And it's got a platform layer for Mac OS. Those are the two platforms that the game is shipped on. So the game is shipped on Steam and it's shipped on Mac OS. Okay, and it's on the Mac App Store. So I get a few sales from the Mac App Store, which is kind of cool. And then it also, I'm working on a third one right now, which is iOS. So it also has an iOS platform layer. And so the core language of the game is written in C++, which is basically like kind of like a C style C++, because I don't really like C++ either. It's like, that's the core of the game is written in that. And then it's got these different platforms that it runs on. So on Windows, the rendering language is actually DirectX. So it uses D3D11 as the renderer. And it uses like a bunch of other input libraries and stuff. And on Mac OS and on iOS, it uses Metal. And so it actually has two different rendering languages, but the shaders are basically the same. So it's not that big of a deal. And yeah, so it's got these different platforms that it runs on. And I have like a few different technical blog posts that I've done, and I have some work that I've done kind of describing some of that more at a high level, but I don't want to show that on my game Steam page. Actually, I'd much rather like just kind of talk about some of the process that went through my mind as I was working on this, because it's developer stream. Or this is like for players, so you can kind of see what the game is about and sort of some of the things that you can do in the game. But then I could talk some about how I developed it. So the game right now is being featured in Turn-Based Carnival 2024. That's sort of what this stream is for, what I'm doing it for. And I'm just showing you some of the cool things that you can do, and maybe just kind of like, if you're thinking about making games yourself, or if you're interested in it, there's definitely some validity to this idea of just picking up, firing up a text editor and like just kind of starting to just write the game, just make the game, and then like you don't really have to use these tools actually, and maybe takes a little bit longer to do it. But what's cool about it is you eventually get to a stage where you've actually got a lot of accumulated knowledge. And so as I showed you the iOS port earlier, what's neat about that is it took maybe a month or so. So, and actually most of the work in like starting to port it to iOS was just in the frustration of figuring out what the heck Apple wants you to do. So it's more like I call it Apple guessing. And this is not to be like Tim Cook, if you're watching, like, I mean the best. I own shares of your company. I want your company to succeed, obviously, because then that will help my own wealth and the wealth of my game studio. So maybe as a word of like just a word of feedback, actually, for Apple, I would love it as a game developer if there was just like less what I call Apple guessing, less of me having to infer something to do. Like actually, if there was just like more documentation for how to work on software in like a cross-platform way that isn't like what I would call tribalistic. So tribalistic software is kind of like where they want you to be as much into their environment as possible. Like you have to use all of their kits and everything to do. So they have like a sprite kit, right? And so like that would be if like the most tribalistic way for me to make this game would be for me to use sprite kit on Apple platforms. And then like nothing would be cross-platform about it at all. And that would be, that would not be the greatest thing, I think, because it would make it very difficult to port to Windows, which this is running on right now, or, the Steam Deck or Android or anything like that. So actually what I would really like from Apple, what would make me happy as a shareholder and as a partner in business with them, is if they just gave people a very rough template for how to hook up video and audio and then just build the app using their own custom build system, like a build script. If they just provided that, and then there was like less guesswork in the entire process. So if more of the errors were a lot more descriptive and they just said exactly what thing got flagged or whatever, I think that would be a lot better for us. I would like really appreciate that, because then, so like, I got the game working on iOS. So I'll show you that. Like I already showed that earlier. It is working. And I'm in a stage now where most of what I have to do is just design it to like run well, right? So it's working. So I'm in more of a stage where I would say that I'm past the core Apple guessing for the iPhone version of my game, and I'm at more of a stage of just needing to design the mobile experience better, but. That Apple guessing phase probably took about 2 to 3 weeks, right? Of just being like, I'm not getting any audio out of the speakers. What? And there's like no error telling me why I'm not. Oh, it turns out this one property was like supposed to be different on Mac OS versus iOS. And like, if you put the wrong value in, then like, it just gives you, you don't get any sound. So this just sucks. So like, that's one thing that can totally happen. And if you're just like not prepared for it, then like, too bad. So it's just kind of interesting, like how, and it's little things like that. And if I really like document the time that I spend on, 1 second. If I really document the time that I spend on things like Apple guessing, it's like surprisingly a lot. It's like weeks of time. And hopefully, so like my hope, Tim Cook, if you're watching, is that it's actually not like, is that like I just do like one Apple guessing round, right? Like I guess the right thing, and then I get it shipped. And that's kind of what happened with like if I think about like shipping to the Mac App Store, I think I spent about a week on Apple guessing in order to like get everything packaged up and like shipped to the App Store. So it wasn't too bad. And then like I recently updated on the Mac App Store and I didn't have to do any more Apple guessing. So I'm thinking I'm pretty much in the clear of like not having to Apple guess anymore. Um, at least for Mac OS. But for iOS, like there's a decent chance I've got probably another week or two of more Apple guessing just to like to make the final version that I then ship to the iOS app store. And so my hope is I only have to Apple guess once and then like I'm in the clear, like no more Apple guessing for at least, okay, some stuff will change. So like maybe in a decade, I'll have to like invest another 2 weeks into some Apple guessing. That's possible. But yeah, if there could just be like less of that, if there could be like a starter template project that's just like, here's how you do it in a way that is like the least tribalistic possible, where you hook up the audio and you hook up the video and we're done. That would be great for people like me. So, but anyway, I just thought I'd kind of like show you some of like what's in the game and give you like a bit of a behind the scenes thing. Later on today, my friend Alex is actually going to play the game. So that should be really fun. It's just going to be a live stream of him playing the game. If I play the game, you don't want to see that because I know too much about it and it would just spoil everything. So it'd be kind of better if you just saw somebody else like, genuinely playing the game and having a good time and trying to solve the puzzles because I already know the answers. So it's not fun. So anyway, I will see you later. And this has been a lot of fun. Talk to you soon.